just wanted to say that the order that I'm doing these cards in, I'm not picking it myself. I'm dividing the pack whichever way it wants to go till I'm left with one card in my hand. And I turn it over and then I colour it in. Okay, so we've now ended up with the insane. Okay, and so this is what I have to talk about. Who the insane are, and who is insane? Is it the people who say the people are insane, or is it the people who are just going about their business who those people say are insane? Are they the insane? Who is the insane? If you find yourself in a padded cell, you see this is actually a padded cell here, with a jailer, an evil jailer, going to put you in a padded cell and take your human rights away from you. This is the very worst thing that can happen to you at the hands of Desolation Row. Those people who are walking the pathway of damnation. You will never find a saved person in this position here as jailer over the insane. You will never find this. You will only find the saved, those on the pathway of salvation, in the padded cell, accused of such things, you know. And I'll tell you, just the other day I read that this happened to Marilyn Monroe. That they took her away. They took her and put her in a padded cell. And it's happened to me also. And I fought against them as hard as I could. There was nothing wrong with me. Yet everybody on the pathway of salvation has to experience this for themselves. They have to experience being in a mental institution, and they have to experience being locked up in prison, being arrested with the handcuffs. They have to experience all this. It had to happen. It happened to Jesus, it happened to Paul, it happened to all the disciples, it happened to Jim Morrison, it happened to Marilyn Monroe, it happened to Tommy Robertson. They're all getting their wings, yeah. That has to happen to them. They have to be treated this way because these people are the leaders of humanity. When they become philosophers, they are the elders of humanity, and so they need to know about all of these things, because how can you lead except you've had experience of these things? Okay. And when they arrested me, I said, I'm part of the church. I said, you know, everything I'm doing is under the will of God. There's nothing wrong with me. And so what they did was, they got two churchmen who never even knew what salvation was, didn't know nothing about it. And they had to come and ask me some questions about God and stuff like this. And I looked at these guys and I answered their questions, and they looked at each other, and then they left the room. Then they came out and put me in the padded cell, you know. They must have talked to these guys to say, is this guy really religious or not? And they would have said, no, he's not one of us, not one of us. Because they're also on the pathway of damnation, you know. They're wearing the outfits, but they're not walking the walk, yeah. They're not living without money, in poverty, chastity, obedience. They're driving around in cars. Anyway, now I'm frightened because they might come and knock on my door because of all these videos I've made, and come and arrest me, put me in the padded cell, and say that I'm insane. And this is how they get rid of you. If the crimes that they say you've committed you actually didn't do anything. Yeah. So they start by arresting you. The police come and get you, and then they hand you over to the mental health people. And then they lock you up without trial, without anything like that, because it's too embarrassing for them to have anything to do with you in the criminal justice system, because you're not a criminal. You haven't done anything. Yeah. Yeah. I got arrested for having a pee. In a public place, because I needed to go for a pee. It was in the country. It wasn't in there was a road going by, and there was a few cars. So you know how it is. You turn away from the cars and you have a pee in the hedge, right? And maybe somebody turned around to look and they saw something, and phoned the police and said, "There's a guy exposing himself on the side of the road here." What could happen to you? And now the police get a call, they don't know what's going on, they just come and arrest you. And then however you come across to them, did you see that movie Rambo? It wasn't called Rambo, it was Rambo, it was the first Rambo movie. It was called First Blood. It was from a novel written by David Morrell. I remember reading this novel when I was a child, and I really enjoyed it. So if anybody likes reading this sort of stuff, First Blood, David Morrell. But eventually they made it into a movie, and it was the first Rambo movie. And this guy, he could have ended up in a mental institution too, if he didn't watch out. But he just ended up being murdered by the police, yeah? Being attacked, attempted murder by the police. And it's a very good movie to watch if you want to have an understanding about how the damned police act when they pick up somebody who's doing nothing except wandering the way under the auspices of God. This guy was walking around trying to find his way, visiting some old army buddies, and with a sleeping bag, and just freely traveling just to find his course in life. And he got molested by the police, yeah. And it's a very, very, very bad system we have, the justice system. And it all ends up in the padded cell. If there's anything that can embarrass the police, it ends up in the padded cell, and accusations of insanity. And if they do this to you, if they do what they did to Rambo, you can end up actually becoming insane. they can drive you insane. Yeah, this whole experience of being arrested and put into a mental place. This is the most fearful experience a person can have in their entire life. This is the worst thing that can happen to a person. Yeah, not the nicest thing at all. Yeah, you can't help somebody by by locking them up. Can't help somebody in that way. Did you watch the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? See what happened to him when they got hold of him. Nothing wrong with him. Yeah, nothing wrong with him. There's no such thing as insane people. Yeah. People need to be tolerated and allowed to do what they do. It's a mystery of God if somebody's a little bit strange. It's necessary to accept these people, not persecute them. It's not just persecution, it's torture. Torture them. This is a torturer of ordinary people on a divine pathway, people on the pathway to salvation. On the journey of salvation, the insane asylum is very much something to be careful of. Okay? After I left the insane asylum, on my final meeting with the person who had been put in charge of making me sane again, so I had to act sane, I had to act sane. I'm all insane now. It's just crazy. They're completely crazy because they're completely separated from you. You're not part of God at all. They look at you as an object. There's something wrong with him. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with him. And of course, when you think there's something wrong with somebody, it's actually because there's something wrong with you. You haven't seen the whole, really. You haven't seen the whole. And so to go insane over somebody else's behaviour, that's what a psychologist or a psychiatrist does, or sociologist. So, you know, all these false sciences, they're not really true sciences at all. And what the insane need, the insane are simply the virtuous monks and nuns on the pathway to salvation. That's what they are. And they're no longer doing the will of man. They no longer will do what they're told. They will do what they feel like doing, yeah? And it's necessary to allow people to do what they feel like doing. You know, if they came in here and found that your house was a mess, they could say, oh, you're not capable of looking after yourself anymore, we're going to have to lock you up. They just don't understand that there are times when your house does need to be a mess. You know, all of you have experienced this where you don't know why it is, but you don't clean up. You know, you let the house go and get a mess. Because if you have an experience like this in the loony bin, you've got some very, very, very difficult events to process. Now you see humanity in a new light. You saw before that the humanity was benevolent, and now you see they're just all mad and terribly, you know, all against you. This is what Rambo found. Yeah. And so now you've got all this to process. You've got on top of what else you've experienced in your life. And so to take this out of you requires a dirty environment to get it out of you, because everything in a demonic, what I call a demonic environment. Demonic environment is good for taking bad stuff out of you. You know, the act of getting bad things out of your brain, that requires a demonic environment. And angelic environment, a nice, tidy, clean, beautiful Garden of Eden, that's required for nice visions of God and stuff like that. That's required for that sort of stuff. It's two opposites, yeah. And so out of its opposite, something comes out as opposite. Like I said to you before, you don't get war comes out of peace, and peace comes out of war. Too much peace, you end up with stagnation, and war freezes up. Too much war, then you know you end up realizing that this is no good, and you become sensible. You come back to your senses, and start to live in peaceful fashion together with your brothers and sisters. Stop treating everybody as if they're insane. Stop treating the Russians as if they're some evil in the world. Nothing wrong with the Russians. They're probably better people than you are, yeah? If you don't like Russians. I love Russians. I think Russians are sensible. Yeah. Not quite as insane, the Russians. Not quite as insane as the West. They have their own form of insanity, I suppose. Because it's actually insane to be on the downward pathway, to be on the pathway, to avoid salvation, to be on the pathway to damnation is actually a form of insanity, yeah? You're not looking at what it is you do, or you can't look at yourself anymore, see what you've done wrong. All you do is you just feel separated from everything, you feel unhappy, but you're blaming everybody else on it. You're blaming it on everybody else. It's enough about the insane. How you avoid it, I don't know. You probably can't avoid it. If you're on the pathway of salvation, you're probably all going to experience it at least once, and then you learn your lesson. Romeo disguised as Robin Hood, with his memories in a trunk, passed this way an hour ago with his friend, some jealous monk. Watch out for them, who looked so immaculately frightful as he bummed a cigarette and reported you to the loony bin and stole your cigarettes. That's one other point. Your loved ones, your friends, these are the people most likely to dob you in and get you chucked in the insane asylum. Watch out for them, because if you're going on your Mysterian drama trip, on your journey to salvation, you've got to leave them all behind, and they're not going to think that you're sane if you're having visions and dreams and not drinking and being good and not womanizing and doing all the things that they do. They're going to think you're insane. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. Thanks for watching.